This is the BENU Pixie. It's a compact, pocket-sized fountain pen which sits at the bottom of BENU's lineup. And a big thanks goes out to goldspot.com for generously sending me this pen for review. I really appreciate you trusting me with your product. As is customary for most BENU models, this is available in a wide variety of finishes, and today I have it in a resin that's called Twilight Lagoon. The top finial has a subtle recessed groove, and then the overall cap has a bulbous shape. In this Twilight Lagoon finish, the cap is broken up into two colors. The top of it is a translucent teal resin, which has a bit of chatoyancy throughout, and I like how you can admire the nib just by looking at the pen. We then have a swirl of gold flakes, followed by a beautiful purple acrylic, which is carried onto the pen body. This acrylic has kind of a chatoyant finish, but it also has a ton of shimmer. In the middle of the cap, we see a recessed groove, which features the BENU logo engraved and colored here in silver, but if you pick a different resin, it may be colored in gold. Because this is a cutout and not a facet, it does not act as a roll stop, but it does create a slight imbalance in the pen, and it has a tendency to settle with this groove facing up. The cap has a subtle step down to the body, and it comes off in 1, 2, and about 3/4 of a turn to reveal a number 5 size stainless steel Schmidt made nib. I have it here in gold, but depending on the finish that you select, it may be in silver, and it's available in fine, medium, or the broad, which is what I have here today. And on the back, we can see a black plastic feed. The grip section is narrow and quite long. It starts with a flare-up, followed by a taper to threads, which are smooth to the touch. The body is then very short, and it has a very subtle taper thinning down to the bottom, where we see another recessed concave groove. In the hand, the pen is very compact, lightweight, and for me with medium-sized hands, it's not suitable to use for short notes, but I could probably get away with using it for quick tally marks. The cap does post deeply. If you don't apply any pressure, it's not super secure. I find it has a tendency to wobble and maybe even fall off. But if you apply a little bit of pressure, it does post securely. And in its posted form, the pen is still quite compact in my medium-sized hands. The center of gravity is inside the crook of my hand, which makes it a great note taker. But for me, it's a little bit too short to use for long writing sessions. In terms of size comparisons, here's the BENU Pixie, a typical Pilot G2 rollerball pen, and your standard Sharpie. Before we disassemble the BENU Pixie, I wanted to take a moment to compare it with a few other compact fountain pens. First up, I have the Kaweco Sport, and here I have it in brass, but it's available in a wide variety of other materials. And we can see its proportions are fairly similar to the BENU Pixie, but it is quite a bit longer in its cap form. Next up, I have another Kaweco. This is the Lilliput. It is made here in copper, but it's also available in many other materials. And in its cap form, it's quite a bit thinner than the Pixie and a little bit longer. Next, I have an acrylic fountain pen. This is by Pen BBS, and it's the model 471. You can see it has a roll stop ring at the bottom, but the rest of the pen is made out of acrylic. Of the pens on the table, this is the only one that's specifically designed to only be eyedropperable. It cannot accept a cartridge. And then lastly, I have the Pilot E95S. Of the pens on the table, this one is the most expensive. It's also the only one with a gold nib, which we'll take a look at in a minute. It's the longest of the pens on the table, and also the only one with a built-in clip, though both of the Kawecos are available with optional clips. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps removed. All caps unscrew, with the exception of the E95S. This one has a pull-off cap. And in the uncapped form, the E95S is the longest pen, and the Pen BBS is the shortest. Let's take a closer look at these sections and nibs. All nibs are fully exposed, and all are stainless steel, with the exception of the Pilot. This one has a 14 karat gold inlaid nib. The Pen BBS is the only one with a number 6 size nib, and in this case I swapped in an FBR nib, but the standard Pen BBS nib is also a number 6 stainless steel. The BENU, as I previously mentioned, is made by Schmidt, And then both of the Kavekos are branded Kaveco, but are actually made by Bock. In terms of grip sections, the Pilot has a grip that tapers all the way back. The Pen BBS, BENU, and Kaveco Lilliput all have flare-ups followed by tapers to threads, and the Pen BBS has the most dramatic step up to the barrel. And then the Sport has an hourglass-shaped grip. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps posted. All caps post securely. The Lilliput and the Pen BBS have screw-to-post caps. The rest are friction fit. And in the posted form, the E95S is by far the longest pen, with the BENU being slightly shorter than the Lilliput. Okay, disassembling the BENU Pixie. No tools are required, but you might find gripping materials are useful to have. The cap unscrews. And inside we can see that there is no cap liner, so for regular cleaning, I just run this under warm water. If I see some really stubborn ink stains, I might soak it with a little bit of mild detergent. In terms of the pen body itself, it can be unscrewed from the grip section. And that's it for the body. If you want to eyedropper this pen, there is a little recess right there, which could probably accommodate an O-ring. None came with this pen, but I think it's not out of the realm of possibilities. Right now, I do have the Kaveco folding converter installed into this pen. It also takes the standard international short cartridge. If you're curious about this converter, it can also be disassembled. You simply unscrew this back sleeve, and then you can pull the piston unit out of that chamber. In terms of removing the sleeve from the piston unit, I don't really see a need to. You can just simply add some silicone grease to this head. But I suppose if you really wanted to, you could push this pin out and separate the two black components. For the grip section, we can remove the nib and feed, grab them with your gripping materials, and unscrew. And there we can see that they're held inside this nib collar. Again, grabbing them with their gripping materials, they should be able to be pulled straight out. And then the nib and feed separate just like that. At this point, the pen is fully disassembled. In order to reassemble, I'm going to start with the feed and the nib collar. It is keyed, so in one orientation, it goes a little bit further in. And then we're going to line up the nib and slide it down. And what we're looking for is the shoulders of the nib to line up with the shoulders of the feed. We can then screw this into our grip section. And then for the Kaveco folding converter, we'll put the piston through the back and then screw the sleeve down. And just like that, the converter is fully functional. I'll go ahead and insert that into the back of our grip section. We'll then reattach our barrel. And lastly, our cap. And at this point, we're ready to ink up. Okay, inking up the BENU Pixie. Today, I selected one of my favorite purple inks. This is Waterman Tender Purple. We'll take the cap off the bottle of ink and the pen. Remove the barrel. As I previously mentioned, I've been using this pen with this folding Kaveco converter, but the pen is designed to take an international short cartridge. If you have a pre-filled one, you just simply insert it into the back of this pen. But here I'm going to use this converter, which has a little ledge that you grab with your fingernail. We'll put the nib into the ink and pull up. That looks like a nice full fill. I'm going to fold this piston, which locks it in place. Wipe off our grip section, as well as our feed and nib, which appear to be collecting a lot of ink here. There we go. Let me put the barrel back on the pen. As well as the cap. Cap up our ink. And at this point, we're ready to write. Okay, writing with the BENU Pixie. The cap unscrews, and I am going to post it. And today we're writing with a stainless steel broad nib, which is made by Schmidt. And it is a beautifully tuned nib. It's extremely smooth, very wet, and has great consistent ink flow. If I had anything negative to say about this nib, it's that it is a fairly stiff steel nib, but considering it's in this pocket pen form factor, I think that's very appropriate. Personally, I prefer stiff nibs for short notes, and that's what I would want to do with this sort of pen. In terms of our ink, today we have one from Waterman. And it is called Tender Purple. For Flex, I'm going to turn the page. As I mentioned, it's a stiff steel nib. I'm not really getting any line variation. And for reverse writing, much more scratchy. I am getting a thinner line though. The feed is having a little bit of trouble keeping up, but I think you could consider reverse writing if you wanted to with this pen. So, what do I think of the BENU Pixie? I like many aspects of this pen, and naturally, I think the standout feature of this model and this particular pen is the resin. I really love this Twilight Lagoon. Both of the different types of resins that are used are extremely captivating. The purple is full of chatoyancy and tons of sparkle and shimmer throughout, with a lot of little different layers of depth. And this Twilight Lagoon is extremely interesting to look at. It almost has like a holographic appearance. And I love that you can admire the nib just by looking through the cap. I also like that this pen is available in many other resin types as well, including some that are a bit more subtle and more appropriate for an office setting. Overall, the pen is also extremely compact and all of the edges are very smooth, so it's a very comfortable pen to throw into your pocket. And coming in at under $100 US, this pen is one of the most affordable models that BENU has ever made, and I think it will serve as an introduction to the brand. On top of that, the nib is made by Schmidt. It's an extremely well-performing nib, and it is very smooth, very wet, and a great workhorse of a pen. But I do see areas for improvement with this model, and actually the overall proportions I think is one of them. I am a big fan of pocket pens, and if you watch this channel, that really shouldn't be a surprise to you, but there's something about the proportions on this pen that I feel like are a little bit off. Uncapped, I can't use this pen. It's just a little bit too small. I think if I had really small hands, I probably could get away with short notes. But for me with medium-sized hands, I can only really do tally marks. And then when I post it, first of all, you have to post the cap deeply in order to get it to seat securely. Even then, I have had this come loose on occasion while I'm writing, which is a little discomforting. But also because this cap is so thick, I would expect the rest of the pen to also be comparable in thickness. And in the hand, it makes the grip section feel overly thin. And then, because of the form factor of a pocket pen, I typically tend to use these for quick notes out and about. And the fact that it takes 2 3/4 of a turn to remove the cap feels a little bit excessive and makes it a little less usable. And speaking of usability, I wish that there was either a roll stop or a clip for this model. I don't have an issue having pens without clips, but I prefer that they have functional facets that act as roll stops, like what we see on this Kaweco Sport. But BENU making this nice cutout seems like just a little bit of a miss not making that an actual functional facet. I often fight this pen from rolling away from me. But overall, I do think it's a great introduction to the BENU brand. To me, the brand has become synonymous with outstanding resins and very well-tuned nibs, and this pen is really no exception. And that just leaves me to say, Thank you for watching.